Hi, welcome to the conference. My name is Margie. I'm the development director here at Animal Place, and I am here with Samuel, one of the most perfectest cows in the whole universe. And he was rescued from a cruelty case at a dairy farm. As you can see, he's very friendly and very sweet. Please enjoy the conference.
Hi, welcome to the Farmed Animal Conference eSummit. We are so excited to have you here. I'm your host today, Kelsey Leach, the Associate CEO at Animal Place, and I'm incredibly honored and excited to introduce you to our guest, Marc Bekoff, PhD, is Professor Emeritus of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology at the University of Colorado Boulder, a fellow of the Animal Behavior Society and a former Guggenheim Fellow. He has published 30 books on how animals think, behave, and what they feel, including books for children, the scientific community, and everyone in between. Aside from animal behavior, his expertise includes cognitive ecology, which is the study of animal minds, behavioral ecology, which is the environmental and evolutionary influences on animal behavior, compassionate conservation, which approaches wildlife protection with the understanding that the life of each individual matters, human-animal relationships, and of course, animal protection, including farmed animals. His wildly popular essays on psychology today have earned Marc a new generation of fans who think critically and compassionately about the ethics of using animals. They are joining us today from Boulder, Colorado, and we're so excited. Thank you for coming back to the Farmed Animal Conference, Marc.
My pleasure, indeed. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the last time you were here, it was in 2020 for the Farmed Animal Conference. And you had just submitted your new book, A Dog's World, for publishing. And as a dog enthusiast myself, and I haven't completed it yet, but it is so wonderful. And we as humans do not give dogs or any animals enough credit, do we?
No, and in fact, you could very well write a book. Instead of A Dog's World, you can just say A Non-Human's World, imagining the lives of non-humans in a world without us. And, you know, they do pretty well.
Absolutely. I'll look out for that book, Marc.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah. So I want to get started with a bit of a fun question. Do you have a favorite animal species and why?
I really don't. I mean, I studied coyotes in the field in Wyoming for many years, and I studied penguins in Antarctica as well. People think maybe dogs, since I spend countless hours at dog parks and watching dogs play and sniff all the things that they're allowed to and not allowed to, but not really. I mean, I find spiders to be fascinating. And I mean, I've never studied spiders, but their sensory capacities are simply amazing for these small brain, tiny, beings. So I don't like to play favorites among non-human animals.
That makes sense in your line of work, and I can absolutely appreciate that. You mentioned you like to spend time at dog parks observing behavior, and I have to say, I got into positive reinforcement dog training, and it's given me a whole new view on watching dogs communicate, and it is so interesting, and they communicate so well. So I can understand that.
No, and that's great, because one of the things I was going to get into later, but I can get into now, especially for people who wonder whether cows and sheep and pigs and other quote food animals, I hate that phrase, but I'll use it, have emotions. I just say, you got a dog? You got a cat? You got a guinea pig? A gerbil?
Absolutely.
Watch them. They're all mammals. And of course you could argue, people get into arguments about chickens being dumb and fishes not having emotions. And I can also use the same line of argument.
Yeah.
But I do think the world would be a better place if people applied, including carnivores, human carnivores, who, if they applied the same principles of knowledge and behavior that they express towards their companion animals to so-called food animals. I mean, there's exceptions because there's nutballs out there who don't take care of their dogs, cats, or other companion animals.
Sure.
But I'm assuming that most people really want to do better than they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you on that. So we did touch on compassionate conservation during our 2020 Farmed Animal Conference, but I think it's important to discuss again before jumping into animal emotion. So can you explain what compassionate conservation means?
Yeah, I mean, it's really pretty simple. I mean, there's a couple of basic tenets. The first is first do no harm. Mm-hmm. The second is the lives of all individuals matter. And then there's one, respect all animals, wild and captive. So it's the focus, I think, on individual well-being that really matters. Jessica Pierce and I wrote a book called The Animal's Agenda that was published in 2017, where we developed the concept of animal well-being to replace the science of animal welfare. Because animal welfare fails. If you count fishes, trillions of animals. Absolutely. It doesn't mean that people are nasty. I always like to stress that. But, the calculus for animal welfare is if it benefits humans more than it costs the animals, then it's okay to do. But of course, the assessment of the costs to the animals in many cases are biased because so many human beings who use and harm and kill animals are human exceptionalists. They think that we're the best thing on the block and we're above and separate from other animals. So compassionate conservation, like animal well-being, basically says the life of every single individual matters, every single one. So in conservation, you can't play the numbers game. People will say, well, there's 1 million brown rats, so we can kill 10,000 of them. And I always say that I'm sure the world is better that there's not 1 million of me, but I wouldn't want people to say that, well, there's 1 million white guys who live in Boulder, or white guys like you, so you don't count. That's what they're saying. Your life doesn't count because there's other people like you who will survive, if you will, our onslaught. So the bottom line, when you begin to really apply that, is that killing's off the table. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing for me. You can't kill animals. So even within the compassionate conservation movement, and it's a really rapidly growing, it's still rapidly growing, globally, there are people who will make exceptions to, say, the rule of non-killing. And once again, I say they're not bad people. It's just the way they view the world. And it's different from the way I do. The reason I stress that, because, of course, one extension of compassionate conservation is if you're going to harm, I don't want to say harm, if you're going to kill other animals, you do it in the most humane way. But one of the most egregious examples, and there's a lot, would be food animals, like Temple Grandin's work. They get raised in crappy conditions. They get on a transport truck where they're continually suffering, and they get in line to be killed on the killing floor, and the bolts don't work, and the methods of killing are barbaric. But if you're doing the best we can, or so they'll argue, and Temple Grandin talks about her stairway to heaven. Well, the stairway to heaven going down to the killing floor is a stairway to hell. Let's not sugarcoat it. So the reason I say that, once again, is because some people will say, well, we're farming cows and pigs and chickens and fishes and other animals. And, well, we may have screwed up here, but there's 1 million more like them. Well, tell that to the pig who's being killed. So the reason I'm jumping into that is because compassionate conservation, the phrase, suggests that it deals mostly or solely with wild animals, but it really extends into zooed animals who are incarcerated in zoos. and animals who are incarcerated in the agricultural food industry, and animals who are incarcerated in laboratories and zoos and circuses and other places where they're held captive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the reason I established that is because I think the umbrella of compassionate conservation and the umbrella of animal well-being versus animal welfare is really inclusive.
It's so needed, and something that you mentioned about people justifying killing as okay if the animals are killed in a humane way. It's something we call the humane myth here at the sanctuary, because there is no humane way to take anyone's life. So I so appreciate that is an umbrella for all living individuals, correct?
Yeah, humane washing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I call it.
Yeah.
It's
a real thing.
Well, we don't, when people say, well, we don't really like doing it, but we have to. And I'm going, really? I have nothing more to say about that.
Yeah.
I don't have to do anything, or there's things I have to do, but killing other animals is not what I have to do.
Yeah.
And I think if people start hiding behind that humane washing, shield, or, well, I have to do it, it's my job, then there's just something missing there. And once again, I want to be really clear that I'm criticizing their position, not the person. I've learned over the years that otherwise good people can do nasty things to non-humans. And you don't get anywhere by beating people down. You might as well just go home. But yeah, I think compassionate conservation and the science of animal well-being have much to contribute to farmed animal welfare, well-being, and that in other venues in which animals are used, abused, and killed.
Absolutely. And Marc, for viewers who are not familiar with the term sentience, can you give us a brief definition?
The ability to feel. I know the ability to feel. 4 words that probably are written about in 5,000 books, maybe. That's what it really means. The ability to feel, feeling beings, the ability to feel a wide range of emotions, from, just debilitating pain and suffering to joy and happiness and gleefulness and contentedness. So, yeah. People beat it to death, but, I wrote an essay about a month ago saying it's time to get over wondering whether non-human animals are sentient.
Yes.
They are.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I read that.
just stop it.
Yeah. It's so obvious.
Well, the other thing too is I actually wrote something today about intelligence, but it also applies to sentience, is using humans as the comparative measure. Well, they don't think like we do. They don't enjoy play like we do. They don't suffer like we do. They don't learn what we do. Well, that doesn't mean anything. As a biologist, you're basically focusing on who these animals are and not in comparison to humans. And so when people say, well, yeah, they act as if they feel pain, or they act as if they enjoy playing. And I'm going, really, as if? So do you. I could turn that argument around, but we're not the template against which people should be comparing other animals. I'm sure there's commonality in the suffering and joys of pigs and cows and chickens and other food animals, but it doesn't matter whether it's like mine and yours. I may experience joy and pain and pleasure vastly different from you do, the way you do, but it doesn't mean I have it and you don't, or you have it and I don't. The thing that this leads to, and maybe I'm going off track, is the arguments are really dumb, and the reasoning and the ways that they can be dispelled are really simple.
Yeah.
So anyway, I know I'm cutting through about 75,000 pages of literature, But really, I mean, each individual life matters. Each individual has his or her own emotions, and they matter. And they should not be harmed and killed. Anything else you want to talk about?
I think that probably ends our interview. No,
No,
I'm
please
just
don't.
kidding. No, you said it perfectly. I think the simplicity of it is so needed, and it needs to be heard, and we need to spread that message because it's true. It's it's the truth. But no, I do have more questions for you.
I know, that's okay.
I could pick your brain all day. So recently you cited a study by Michael Manfredo in a Psychology Today essay about anthropomorphism, which is the attribution of human characteristics to animals. And the study found that anthropomorphism favors mutualism rather than an ideology of domination. It also speaks to the fact that there has been a shift in the way people perceive animal emotions, yet we continue to kill them in mass. This shows me that we still have so much work to do. How do we help people make a stronger connection to animals, increase their empathy, and hopefully create some behavioral change?
Well, I mean, my answer could go on for, a week or so, but having people have contact with animals. So having, with respect to, say, food animals, farmed animals, having people meet cows and pigs and goats and sheep and chicken and, other animals who are used as food up close and personal. I know that, people will say to me, well, that doesn't really work. I mean, the people who use animals and have farms, whether they're dairy farms or quote organic farms or humane farms, are still in the end causing suffering and taking the life of an animal. I mean, let's not sugarcoat that at all. You're killing another animal. And so have them meet them up close personally. Read about, what we know about these animals. There's no shortage of research on the emotional lives of farmed animals. I mean, and it's increasing. And what I always say is, while we're learning new things, like, a couple of years ago, nose temperature is important or ear position is important, for example, but no one doubted that these animals were feeling beings. And if you look at the 5 freedoms, they were put forth in 1965. That's 50. No, I know I can't do math. That's 57 years ago. So were they satisfactory? No, but they were a good beginning, and people should accept the fact that way back when in the mid 60s, there was a lot of resistance to them as well. But they appeared, and that's because a nucleus of people were really concerned with the welfare or well-being of animals who are used for food. I mean, so they need ample food and water. Hello. They should be able to move around in an uninhibited way. Hello. They should be allowed to perform species-specific behaviors. Well, the minute you say that, there's basically no condition of captivity that's going to allow for that. I mean, in terms of room, availability of social, friends, when cows and pigs and other animals have their children, they're not their young or their offspring, they're their children. They're ripped away from them. Not natural about that. I mean, the natural thing would be for a mother to get pregnant and go through gestation and give birth and give milk to their babies, not have them pulled away from them. And it's clear neither the moms or the children like it. So just knowing what happens. There's been a lot of research on what pig vocalizations mean, the squeals of pigs. Well, having your teeth pulled out when you're being held up by your neck, or your testicles cut off, or your tail cut off without anesthesia, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Of course it hurts. So do I really care whether there's differences in the meaning of these painful vocalizations? I mean, academically, it might be interesting, but the bottom line is these pigs don't like having their bodies dismembered. And people will say, well, we can do it more humanely. No, the fact that you're dismembering them tells me there's something very sick going on. I'm sorry, this dismembering other animals is just not a healthy practice.
No, not at all. And you're so right. When you hear the piglet screaming, it's so obviously connected to fear, pain. They don't want it to be happening. Whereas you see, Peaches the pig at Animal Place, who's running up to you with, soft oof, 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 oinks coming up, and you can see the difference there, a vast difference. This animal is happy and excited to see you. So they are telling us so much with their vocalizations.
Right. And just part of the natural repertoire of these animals is, focusing on moms and women and females, is that, certain behavior patterns as well as physiological processes have evolved. That's what's natural. So you can say they have to perform natural behaviors, breathing, there's not a hell of a lot else they're allowed to do. Their kids are stolen from them. So mom can't go through normal maternal behaviors. And in species where dad might be around, he can't also. So there's nothing natural about it. So the reason I say that the 5 freedoms had some value, it's got people thinking about them. The progress has been far too slow. If I read them in 1965, I would say 1966, they should have closed, animal endowment, industrial agriculture.
Yeah, of course. So I know that we have come a long way. People do, I think, recognize that animals, or some people recognize that animals feel and have emotions, but we still get comments, say, on our social media, of people saying that farmed animals do not experience emotions, and that they simply react to circumstances, or they say they only experience negative emotions. So we know that's not true. But why do you think there's such a disconnect, and what would be your response to someone who thinks this way?
Well, one response, of course, is go read what we really know about them. That won't satisfy the skeptics, but a lot of the skepticism and denial is self-serving. I run a place where animals suffer. They're harmed and they're killed and shipped off to become, a meal for somebody. Or I myself, which I don't, eat animals and animal products. So denialism, that's how they deal with cognitive dissonance, so that's part of it. The other part is astounding to me because, if you can read your native tongue, and imagine, a lot of people who read English, the New York Times and other popular rags have countless articles on the emotional lives of food animals. The other thing that I mentioned at the beginning is a lot of these people live with dogs and cats and guinea pigs and gerbils and hamsters and mice and rats. And I've had conversations with people, lovely, wonderful people, that make no sense to me. Do you think your dog enjoys playing? Do you think your dog, when they get separation anxiety, is feeling fear and, is anxious? Do you think a cow playing or a mommy cow with her children is happy? We don't know. Do you think, pigs rolling around in the mud and playing with one another are happy? We don't know. Are sheep and goats playing king of the mountain, if you will, or queen of the mountain, happy? We don't know. And then I usually end the conversations. I'll say, well, I just don't know really what more to say. They're all mammals. They all have the same basic neural endowment, same neurochemicals, the same structures in the brains. And then I don't know. I don't go on with these people because I call it the as if disclaimer. They're acting or only acting as if they're in pain. The other thing, of course, from a biological point of view, is just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. If negative emotions evolve, why can't positive? One thing that's astounded me over my career is how people are they're so open to saying animals feel negative emotions, but not positive emotions. So therefore, I would say to them, well, if they feel negative emotions, we should be doing all we can to stop the harm and suffering.
Absolutely.
And they'll go, they don't know what to say. They'll say, well, we know that they feel pain and suffering, or we think they do, but they don't feel joy and happiness. I mean, sorry, dumb. I mean, it is just one of the stupidest things I've ever heard in my life. And I have no response to it. I just say, go read, go read books on the emotional lives of animals, go read, specific papers or, popular articles on the emotional lives of all the plethora of animals who wind up in our mouths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's also something that I would encourage people to do, and you stated it earlier, is go spend some time in a sanctuary setting with these individuals and observe them.
I have so many emails from people over the years who have just done just that.
Yeah.
People who don't tell me that I'm a fool or using expletives that I always tell people they use them in a certain order that I never could have imagined using them when they would call me a name. But I just say, go watch these animals, go work at a sanctuary. On the positive side, a lot of people are changing, and I really have had wonderful communications, both personally and over email and other, medium, for people who have said, one woman wrote to me, she took her kids to a 4-H kids farm. What do you call them? Kiddie farms? I don't even.
There's petting zoos.
Petting farms, petting zoos. She said she left there. She said she never would go back there. And she wasn't damning them. She was just saying that one of her kids said something like, well, don't we eat them? And the kid wanted to know more about essentially how they went from being on these petting farms to the plate.
Of course.
And mom I never met her. I never even talked to her, but our email exchange was lovely. She was a lovely woman. She said she just left there shaking her head. And at one point she said to her kid, would you stop asking me those questions? I mean, in a nice way. She wasn't yelling at her kid. She was just saying, could you stop asking me these questions? I don't have any answers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the perfect lead into my next question, because so many people in our society never have the opportunity to connect with farmed animals. In a capitalistic society, do you believe there's a conscious effort being made to keep people from understanding animal sentience in order to protect animal agriculture? And how can we counteract those efforts?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think things are getting better. I don't watch a lot of TV, but now I see ads for food, say for animal food. For food animals or animal products, where there's a little more sensitivity. I'm not saying that it's enough for that. I'm happy and I'll stop there.
Sure.
But yeah, these factory farms are businesses. The bottom line is money. Animals are commodified. There was a great book that Sophie Riley wrote, came out a few months ago, on the commodification of food animals. And I had the pleasure of reading it and writing the foreword for it. And so the commodification of food animals, agricultural animals, is critical for keeping the turnover, if you will.
Yeah.
There's just no other way. And unfortunately, biologists, scientists, psychologists, lawyers, veterinarians buy into it. They just do. And I'd like to believe that at some level they have a heart, and at some level they're doing it certainly for reasons I don't understand, but they're doing it. And that the more that the practice of hiding animal emotions, the more that the practice of slaughtering sentience is made public, people will change their meal plans.
Absolutely.
I mean, what you all are doing, is really critical. Um, I'm I'm confident it will happen, but it's not going to be overnight.
Yeah.
It just ain't going to be like that.
No, but I think looking at the big picture, it is amazing to see the progress we have made
Uh-huh.
as in the last 10 years. So that's really incredible. So we
Yep.
know how to easily identify emotions in people and some non-human animals like dogs. I think, for instance, most people associate a wagging tail with a happy dog. But it would be wonderful if we, as a species, could recognize emotions in farmed animals through their behavior. So, what are some reasonable criteria we can use to better understand different animal emotions?
Well, I mean, one, like in cows, I mean, and once again, it's not accessible to most people, but if they read about it, maybe they would look for it. Nose temperature, facial expressions, ear positions, in cows. Um, I'm not really sure about pigs, but one thing that I always tell people in animals who I don't know or don't have as expressive faces, say as dogs do,
Mm-hmm.
is just watch them. Do they look uneasy? Are they trying to avoid something or somebody?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can just and let your feeling antennae out, because you can feel the pain and suffering, psychological and physical, in these animals if you open yourself up to them. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, that's just absolute BS. And that's exactly what we mean, that, we don't have mechanisms. But yeah, we do. And so the research is there for pigs, and the research is there for cows. And we already know for various birds,
Mm-hmm.
that you can measure certain emotions in them, and for fishes too. I mean, for fishes, we know that they respond to painkillers just like humans do, and and certain patterns of avoidance behavior have evolved. Well, the reason it's evolved is because the animals don't like pain. They
Yeah,
avoid situations they don't like, just like you and I will.
of
So
course.
once again, to me, it's very simplistic, but I do agree with you. I think things are changing for the better,
Mm-hmm.
slowly, and that's what's going to happen. And when people are,
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I feel too is, the last couple of years have been really hard on so many people, and when they're stressed out in one area of life, other areas suffer too. And
Yeah.
I understand that. I had a woman who's a friend of mine. She was just so stressed out. She just said, I'm sorry, but I just started eating hamburgers more than I ever
Mm.
have in my life. We had a good discussion about it, but I didn't feel like I was in any position to criticize her. I mean, I did.
Yeah.
I was honest to say, I don't understand why you did that, but I'm sorry. I try to be a nice person, and
Yeah.
beating her to death on her food choice when she was otherwise really stressed, it seemed wrong.
Yeah. No,
Just
I,
wrong.
I I understand that, and I think it's important to have compassion
Yep.
for everyone we encounter, and that includes humans. And we are all on different journeys, and there's a lot going on in this world. So, just with compassion and educating people, I think we can go a long way with that.
Well, I mean, education is the bottom line. I mean, kids are the answer, or youngsters.
Mm.
When I do a lot of kids events, I did a tons in person working with Jane Goodall and her Roots and Shoots
Mm.
groups. But one of the things that I used to do, in terms of the question, what you asked me before about contact, I just tell people, go watch the movie Babe.
Mm.
You know, just go watch it. I mean, James
Yeah.
Cromwell is a wonderful animal protection, animal rights, vegan gentleman, and he's the farmer. And just go watch Babe. And then I had this discussion some years ago, actually, with some young kids that a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich is really a babe lettuce and tomato sandwich. And
It's a good parallel.
and people, the teacher got it, and she was lovely, and she was, I mean, I was there doing this roots and shoots group with her regularly because she would be in our camp. But somebody asked me why, and I explained to them. Some had seen Babe, the movie, and others hadn't. And so what happened was kids really embraced that. And one of the kids' moms called the school and was really livid that I had told her kid and others not to eat bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwiches. I had not said that. In fact, I wouldn't say that. I simply said that a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich was a Babe lettuce and tomato sandwich. And kids are inquisitive. They're sponges. And they wanted to know why, because they don't see the transition from Babe the pig or Willie the pig or Emily the pig to bacon, ham, or sausage. Just like kids don't see the transition from a cow to a hamburger. I mean, why would they? I didn't. I mean,
No.
I never even asked.
Yeah, absolutely. They're so smart. Kiddos are so smart, and a simple statement like that obviously helps that particular kid make the connection, which is important.
Yep. I mean, yeah. And so getting youngsters to ask more questions about, who they eat, not what they eat. That's another thing. I just say it's who you eat and who you wear, not what you eat and what you wear. And some editors try to change it, and I always make it very clear that you can't change that. I will pull the essay. Because I mean, with all the stuff I do, I wouldn't want people saying, and you're referring to these animals as whats and its. but language counts, and that's why even with the young kids, I talk about who.
Absolutely. I'd like to get species specific, and I know you touched on it briefly, but are there any specific behaviors that chickens display that we could use to interpret their emotions?
Well, the ones that come to me is because, maybe chickens have a lot of different facial expressions. I don't know that. But once again, I think when you get to know an animal, you can feel what they're feeling sometimes, even with chickens, and other birds, for example. But when they're trying to avoid a situation, I don't think it's rocket science to say that they don't like what they're experiencing or what they're anticipating experiencing. Karen Davis, who runs United Poultry Concerns, is the go-to woman, go-to person on these matters. But I've been around chickens and turkeys at various sanctuaries, and I just can get a feeling for whether they're happy or sad, or whether they're afraid and anxious.
Absolutely.
There's a fluidity of movement. Do they approach you? Do they let you touch them? And do they, I don't know, do they try to avoid you, for example?
Exactly. I have an example that I give to tour guests or people who come to the sanctuary because it was so obvious to me. And when I first started working at Animal Place, I went into our chicken barn and there was this uproar. It was so loud in there, and the birds scattered. And after several months of working at Animal Place, I noticed a stark difference when I entered the barn. There was a calmness when I entered the barn, and they weren't running, and their vocalizations were different. And that's when I realized, they know that I'm a safe human now. They trust me, and that was a big realization for me, and what they were communicating.
And they recognized you. You're the lady in the blue shirt now, or I mean, they're birds who people don't, typically eat, although there's that famous saying, eating crow. But 2-day-old crows remember the faces they've seen when they were just that young, and they
Yeah.
remember them for their lives. So once again, since a lot of birds share very similar neural structures among birds, you can look at research on other birds to see what their memories are and what their emotions are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's complex.
Yeah, and it's readily, I mean, this information is readily available. I mean, my God, I mean, you've got the World Wide Web. I mean, I'm not saying you should believe everything that's on the web, but it's there, and I'm encouraged a lot because I work with youngsters in elementary, middle, and high schools and in colleges and grad school. But, I had these 4 gals from a 4th grade class somewhere, it could have been Ohio, who wanted to know more about animal suffering. So, I boiled it down, but not in any kind of graphic way. But you don't even have to be graphic. I mean, as time goes on, I don't even want to post or just talk about all the brutality out there. But there's ways to communicate very positively with people who are in your camp or skeptics, by not focusing on the negative emotions, for example.
Yeah. Are there any other farmed animals that are farmed within our food system that you could give us some pointers or information about how they display emotion? Maybe cows, pigs?
Not specifically, because I mean, the work that I know on cows by Helen Proctor, for example, really focused on being able to look at ear positions, sort of their movements, or the temperature of their nose, for example. Unless you're walking around with a thermometer, be hard to tell. Eyes. I mean, when I ride my bike a lot out in the country around Boulder, and I ride a lot on the gravel roads, and there's farms out there, and I don't know, maybe I've just been doing this so long, you just get a feeling, like you can with people, of, are they comfortable or not? Is there something bugging them?
Yeah.
But a couple of years ago, I was riding with a group of people, and this woman in the group, she yelled, "Stop, stop, stop." And we thought maybe she got a flat tire or something. There were some goats playing, I guess I'd say king and queen of the mountain, because we're males and females. And she told me, she actually told me, "You have to tell me more about this. I've read all about, these animals playing king of the mountain, and I never really saw it." And there they were, jumping on haystacks and rotating position and things like that. And of course, somebody in the group said, "Well, now Mark's going to tell you that, you shouldn't be eating these animals." And my response was, "You're precisely right." They're playing it. There was really no aggression, but, she said, "You think they're enjoying one another?" And I said, "Well, to be fair, I don't know, but they're rotating positions. They're not fighting, but vying to be on the top hay bale. So there must be something of joy in there, or else they wouldn't be doing it. I mean, their lives otherwise were really nice. I mean, until the end, when they're going to get killed, they were on a lovely farm. They could huge pastures, but here they were playing king or queen of the mountain. So that gets back to your question about direct exposure. And I love it when I see kids out with animals. I'll often stop when I'm riding, and I'll say, "What are you doing?" And it happened a couple of weeks ago, but last year there was this class of maybe 5 and 6 year olds, and they had these little boxes, and they were looking at insects walking across a gravel path. And I asked this little gal what she was doing, and she told me, and she said, "And my teacher told me that we have to put these ants and ladybugs back to where we took them." And I thought, isn't that lovely? And the teacher came over, and of course she wanted to make sure I wasn't some nutball. She didn't know me. But I told her what I did, and and I said, and maybe would you consider giving the kids the choice because you're moving them, from one area to another? And she said, absolutely. So, I mean, with a teacher like that, hello, I mean, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But I loved how this little girl's sensitivity to putting these ants and ladybugs back to where they found them could over time just spill into empathy for a lot of other animals, many of whom are more similar to us than our ants or ladybugs or water bugs. I don't know what they were called. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. If people were taught to observe animal emotions, do you think that they would choose to stop participating in their suffering?
I do. And I know people who have made changes in their meal plans, over time. Yes, I do indeed. Yeah. I think that it's that, once again, that hands-on experience. It's bringing it home with the considering the emotional lives of their dogs, cats, or other companion animals. And it's also knowing that they have alternatives. I mean, for years I was constantly traveling all over the world, and people would say, "Oh, how do you do it? It must be hard to be vegan." And I went, "What's hard about it? I eat salads and pasta and pizza without cheese." And no, I mean, I was trying not to be an ass about it, but people say, "Well, it's so hard." Well, how hard it is? How hard is it, really? So once again, I don't criticize them. I'll just go, well, I don't know. I'm healthy. I could do it. I was going to different cultures. You could always find, I don't know, you could always find jelly in bread.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
And you can, and all the fake meats that are out there, it's, I mean, if you like, I don't really particularly eat that stuff. And, there's fake cheeses out there. I don't particularly like them either. So I don't eat them. I mean, there's plenty of food to eat, like French fries and onion rings and potato chips.
Yeah, I always laugh when I hear the statement, "Oh, I've never had any vegan food." And you go, "Really? Have you had vegetables?"
Oh,
fruit,
yeah, that's
beans,
another
pasta?
thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever eaten a salad?
Yes.
A pretzel.
Right, exactly. So, Marc, I just have a couple of more questions for you. The point of this year's conference is to help make connections and take action for farmed animals. What do you feel is the best way to to connect with people outside of the farmed animal movement, and how can they take action for farmed animals with the information that you've taught us today?
That's a great question. I mean, one way, of course, I always tell people, depending on how old they are and what they have access to, is to write for local media, write letters to the editor, write guest opinions, try to get on the local news. I know some newscasters, and although they don't have total independence, would love to talk about what you and I are talking about, rather than the dismal news in the world today. And I really mean that.
Yeah.
Get kids or people to visit sanctuaries. There's a wonderful animal sanctuary here called Love and Arms. It's just east of Boulder. And Chartrina White is their CEO and ED. And I know nothing about business, but whatever she does out there, she and her team do wonderful work, and they get people to go visit them. People, I don't know I honestly could say this, although maybe I'm a little over the top on it. I don't know anybody who visits animal sanctuaries where there are food and other animals who have been rescued, who don't leave changed. Whether the change is manifest in their behavior, I don't know. But I've been to some events there, and I've been to other sanctuaries where people come in and leave changed.
Absolutely. We see it here at Animal Place all the time. And we do ask those questions. Does the information they learned at the sanctuary, or did the interactions that they made with the animals impact them, and will they consider making a change? And most people say yes. It is
Yeah.
powerful.
And correcting people gently. I mean, I always think that we should be nice to other individuals, although sometimes it's really hard. I mean, I'd rather not interact with anybody than to not be nice to them, but talk to them about what we know, like this king and queen of the mountain. Like, you know, when we ride a lot out in the country here, we see pigs and we see cows and, you know, for example, and goats and sheep. And, you know, people know that the minute we go by there, I'm going to make a comment about not that we shouldn't eat them, although often that follows, but let's look at them.
Yeah.
You know, look at that baby cow and her mom, and look at the baby cow squealing, who's alone in a field. I had a great chat with a group not too long ago about a calf who was obviously looking for mommy.
Yeah.
And the calf was really upset and pissed off. Where's mommy? So we talked about it. I think some of the women I was riding with, many of whom are moms, got it better than some of the men, but I actually think a lot of the men got it too.
Well,
I really do. And the other thing I'll do is after rides, I will always buy lunch or snacks if they're vegan.
Yeah.
I will. I just say vegan snacks or lunches on me. And you know what?
I love it.
Your comment before about I've never eaten anything vegan is so funny, because we go and some of the people I ride with are meat eaters. And number one, they have zero problem doing it. And number two, they get veggie burgers or pizza without cheese or a salad or French fries. I mean, you know what? I mean, you know, or fruit dishes. And stuff. So I really do that. And I do it for, number one, because I like these people. And number two, because they need to experience the variety of meals that are available.
Yes. Sharing vegan meals is a great opportunity to connect with people. And like you said, visiting sanctuaries. I do want to let our viewers know that we have a website, sanctuaries.org, IES.org, and it lists sanctuaries by city, state, in the United States. There are some international sanctuaries listed, but it's a great resource if you're looking to visit a sanctuary. One two-part question. Is there anything I didn't ask you today that you would like to add? And then will you wrap up, Marc, by telling us how people can follow your work?
No, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground, linearly and non-linearly, but I mean, when I have these talks, I think the non-linearity is to be expected, because when I start talking about these things, I mean, I really feel them in my heart. I mean, I really think about these animals a lot. And so, no, I think we covered the ground. I think, once again, among the most important things is to have some contact, either in person, in cow, in pig, in chicken, or in fishes, or go online and watch videos. There's so many videos, and so many really good ones. So no, I think all the information is there.
Awesome.
And then people can find out what I'm up to at marcbekoff.com. I don't really update it much, but my updates used to be, because I was traveling all over, and I'm really not doing much traveling now.
Well, that's okay. There's a wealth of information on your website, so we'll link it in the information below the talk today. And Marc, I just want to thank you so much for the work you're doing, and thank you for being a part of the Farmed Animal Conference eSummit.
It's my pleasure. I love doing this kind of stuff, so thank you. I'm flattered and honored to be here.
Wonderful. All right, we will talk to you later.
Thank you.